Welcome to Inside Games, the only gaming news show brave enough to say the price of the PS5 Pro is too damn high.
It's really up there, yeah, but consider this, Bruce. Where else are you going to play The Last of Us Part 2 Remake Remastered Part 2 in 8K?
On the PC, because we'll just wait till it comes to Steam in like a year.
Touche.
The new PS5 Pro, wow, has been officially announced as like a really terrible Christmas gift this morning. And we hope you've got $700 handy.
PlayStation just pulled the whole, hey, buddy, right in the gut. And you just have to pretend like it's a friendly thing that you guys do. In a blog post, the new PlayStation boss Hideaki Nishino unveiled the new console, which he called, quote, the most visually impressive way to play games on PlayStation.
Okay. And true to the leaks, it did have the 3 Adidas stripes down the middle. So there it is. Look at it. That little concept art was true.
The TLDR version with the new console is that it'll have better graphics and higher frame rates. You kind of hope. If it went the other way, there'd be a serious problem. And it'll launch on November 7th. Pre-orders begin on September 26th, and it's got no disk drive, and it's $700. Did we mention it's $700? God damn. More on that later.
This is blowing my mind that they got rid of the disk drive and then raised the price by $200. Anyway, as for specifics, the new machine has an upgraded GPU with 67% more compute units than the current PS5 console and 28% faster memory. Overall, Sony says it'll have 45% faster rendering.
Those are good numbers, sure. Nishino also said that the console will have better ray tracing that provides more dynamic reflection and refraction of light, with speeds sometimes tripling the current PlayStation 5.
It also will have something called PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution, which is an AI-driven upscaling that uses a machine learning-based technology to provide sharper image clarity. Okay.
Yeah, this tech that's been in like PC graphics for the last 3 or 4 years, so it makes sense that it's now trickling down to the console space. Sony also had a video presentation from lead architect Mark Cerny doing a deep dive into the machine.
We all love Mark Cerny. He said, quote, it's the most powerful console we've ever built, somehow missing the opportunity to release a newer, weaker console. Which, I mean, you know, they could have done like the Series S thing.
Yeah, nobody wants something that's newer and weaker. On that note, hey, our sponsor today can lead to a newer, stronger you.
Inside Games is brought to you by Thesis. Thesis helps people like you and me find the right blend of nootropic ingredients for our brain chemistry. What nootropics are they are nutrient compounds that help improve cognitive function. So they can be a powerful, natural way to boost your motivation, boost your creativity, your mood, and your focus. Thesis uses nootropics that are made with clinically studied ingredients, and every batch is third-party tested. Now, lots of people are trying to improve their productivity and focus, and that's one thing that this may do for you. Managing everyday stress, which is important for a lot of people, especially like me, who are constantly working and trying to make sure everything's going good. So in order to get started with Thesis first, you take the quiz on their website. And this is about discovering the blend that best fits your brain chemistry. You'll try each one of these blends for a week, and then you'll kind of note how you feel. The right blend should help you feel a little more awake, focused, productive, that sort of thing. So if you want to try out Thesis, take that free 3-minute quiz to find out what your brain needs. Just click the link in our description and use our code to save $60 on your first purchase when you sign up for Thesis. Thank you again, Thesis, for the sponsor to the episode. And now let's find out the big reasons for the PS5 Pro.
A big reason for the new PS5 Pro console, Cerny said, is because they don't want people to have to choose between performance or quality presets, which are pretty much standard on PS5 games these days.
Yeah, which I appreciate. He said, quote, players are choosing performance about 3/4 of the time, which is interesting data from Mark Cerny. And it also makes a lot of sense. It's one of those things where whenever we see Todd Howard be like, 30 FPS is fine. No, Todd, it's not. 60 FPS is what people want.
It was only fine when every game was 30 and people didn't know the difference.
People want 60 FPS because that's what's going on right now.
But do people want 60 FPS plus all those other goodies? And are they willing to pay for it? I don't know about that one. The console also has something called the PS5 Pro Game Boost, which Sony says may stabilize or improve the performance of supported PS4 and PS5 games.
Some sample games that will benefit from the enhancement are Alan Wake 2, Assassin's Creed Shadows, Demon's Souls, Dragon's Dogma 2, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Gran Turismo 7, Hogwarts Legacy, Horizon Forbidden West, Marvel Spider-Man 2, and The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. In all, more than 8,500 backward-compatible PS4 games will actually get a boost from this feature, which is pretty cool.
That's pretty cool, but I feel like I don't know. I'm being extraordinarily negative, but usually with features like that, you go to a game you remember and you play it for like 20 minutes and you're like, wow, and that's kind of where it stops. But it's cool. It's cool. As for the console itself, the PS5 Pro is actually the same size as an original PS5, same width as the current PS5 model. It comes with a larger 2 terabyte solid state drive, which is nice. Swaps one of its rear USB-A ports for another USB-C port. It's compatible with the PlayStation VR2 headset, the PlayStation Portal handheld, and existing PS5 controllers.
Oh, and one other big note, it has no disk drive. You can add one yourself for an extra $80, but this to me is maybe the biggest slap in the face of the whole announcement, that they raised it by $200 and then also got rid of the disk drive.
Oh, it gets worse with the disk drive thing. We have a whole conspiracy theory about that later, but the sticker price is still going up, Bruce, because it doesn't have vertical stand. That's another $30. So if you want the kit, PS5 Pro with a disk drive and a vertical stand, it's actually $810. And I have a theory about that too. I think they made the PS5 such an ungainly shape to make it so you kind of need a vertical stand. Otherwise, it's this wide fucking thing that floats above your cabinet. It has flared lapels that kind of prevent you from putting anything around it. Damn, man. It gets under my skin a little bit.
Now for the really bad news. Like we said, it's $700, sorta. If you need another controller, Sony also when it's like yesterday or the day before, quietly raised prices of this DualSense controller by $5, which again, just nickel and diming us like PlayStation's been doing for years, and it hurts.
Yeah, that's no improvements to the controller either, by the way. It's the same 20-minute battery, same drift-prone sticks that are really hard to swap out. Everything. It's just $5 more.
Yeah, the high prices immediately drew comparisons to Sony's infamous 2006 press conference, one of our favorites here at Inside Games, where then CEO Kaz Hirai unveiled the PS3, and it's now a legendary $599 price tag.
Funny, because we've been making some comparisons to PS3 era Sony lately, and I guess we're fully back there. Sony's announcement on X was immediately blasted by people who criticized the price tag and the fact that it didn't come with a disc drive.
Over on the PS5 subreddit, user BearClaw135 wrote, "This would be more tempting if it came with a disc drive. Price killed my excitement."
The Verge's Tom Warren also addressed the $700 issue, tweeting that the price tag certainly tests the waters for next-gen console pricing and discless consoles. He added, "Hold on to your disc drives and wallets because next-gen consoles aren't going to be cheap and will almost certainly come discless as a standard, or just get into PC, but again, we'll get into that later."
Meanwhile, this comes as Sony's financials are predicting a 2% drop in sales, which they partly attributed to hardware for the current fiscal year, which could explain why they're putting on a Pro model now. It definitely explains why they're raising all their prices.
All this comes as the PlayStation 5 is still pretty handedly beating the Xbox Series X and S, having sold nearly 60 million units as of the end of March. But as industry analyst Daniel Ahmad noted, that's actually slightly behind the PS4's totals during the same time frame.
He added that, quote, "While console hardware sales are healthy, Sony is unable to sell more than the prior gen, probably because there are no video games."
And there's that, but there's like a bigger problem behind that, which is that the games industry has only been able to maintain health as long as it's been scaling up and up and up. So if they finally found the outer boundaries of what they can sell, suddenly it's going to become about right sizing and finding the right ROI instead of just pouring money into a furnace that keeps generating gold bars for you. Anyway. And I think we're seeing that in recent headlines for Sony. They've been kind of up, kind of down. The new Astrobot for PS5 released to widespread acclaim, was a much needed exclusive, I think, and introduced a little bit of joy to the brand, I guess. But Sony also shut down its much hyped shooter Concord after less than 2 weeks.
Even Astrobot has a history with studio closures, as Sony shuttered their long-running Japan studio in June 2021, integrating some staff with Astrobot developers team Asobi.
Yeah, that's what churned my guts a little bit, seeing references to things like Ape Escape and Ico inside of Astrobot. Sony just killed that studio and moved them into Team Asobi. Now maybe some of those developers were instrumental in getting those references in there, but it was a rough reminder that Sony has actually killed off a lot of the games that people remember and love over the years. Japan studio, like I said, they've made Ape Escape, Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, and Gravity Rush.
And they also made Knack, Lawrence.
Can't forget Knack. And somehow Sony found it in themselves to close the studio that made Knack. So yeah, like I said, even though Astrobot might be all bright and cheery and happy, it sure does reference a lot of franchises that PlayStation has smothered to death with a pillow in their sleep because they weren't profitable enough.
Speaking of not making money, it's easy to see a narrative on the surface here. PlayStation's games as a service streams haven't really quite worked out. Helldivers might be the only one so far. So they're panic launching new hardware at an inflated price to try and get some of that money back as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's the narrative that seems the most obvious, but some of the data doesn't quite match with that. Also, I don't think that Sony's business plans can be changed that quickly. You know, like because Concord flopped, I don't think that really affected the price or the launch timing of PS5 Pro. But I do think they planned it now because they knew they wouldn't have any hot games this year a few years ago. But let's look at some of the data that's kind of circumstantial around it. For starters, and this was kind of surprising to me, turns out sales of the PlayStation 4 Pro weren't really that high.
Nico Partners Director of Research and Insights Daniel Ahmad commented that the PS4 Pro sold less than 15% of the base PS4's lifetime sales.
That's a low percent, but the PS4 is one of the best-selling consoles of all time. So let's see here. The PS4 sold 117 million units. That puts the PS4 Pro at less than 18 million consoles, which isn't a ton, not for PlayStation.
Nice chunk of change, especially if they're selling the PS5 Pro at profit, which they probably are. So this could be some decent change depending on this profit margin. But Sony indicated they're still not earning a profit on their hardware, or at least they weren't in 2023. I think the Pro changes that. I really do.
I'm really curious. Yeah. So this is from Sony's fiscal 2023 report. They mentioned that they experienced an increase in losses in hardware due to promotions, and that 2024 would see a decrease in hardware losses due to lower unit sales.
Okay. It's like a logic puzzle.
Yeah, kind of.
So they'll lose less money because they expect to sell fewer consoles. This sure sounds like normal PS5s are selling at a loss, which makes sense.
Yeah, and it kind of makes me wonder if the Pro is going to sell at a profit, or maybe less of a loss than they were planning. Maybe if everything else was working out, they could take the hit on the hardware, but now that it's not, they have to trim up their losses per unit. Who knows? Regardless, this is all just kind of academic, but that's what we do. Whether or not Sony earns a profit on their console doesn't make $700 any more affordable for you.
No, it doesn't. There's another more obvious and also more insidious angle Sony will take to suck the money out of your accounts, because that's what they've been doing for years, like I've been saying on the show. Digital-only games. Now, this is something I say often, but I buy video games almost every day because I do lots of giveaways on my stream. The PlayStation Store is always the most expensive by a long shot for any of these video games. And we've reported on that a number of times here, talking about this little monopoly they've got going.
Yeah, I'm still surprised that people don't really take and run with this, because it's the most verifiably shady thing that PlayStation does. That, like Bruce said, they straight up inflate all of the prices of games and DLC on the PlayStation Network because they earn a percentage of all those sales. So the higher the prices are, the higher their cut.
Yeah, this is not paranoia. They have faced lawsuits on this that actually crunched this data and proved it.
I think the disk drive is available so that they have a parachute out of being sued. People can just buy the drive, and then physical games have to compete with each other. Physical games are cheaper, but it's not the default choice anymore. It requires an extra purchase, and also you've got to break open your PlayStation 5 and bolt it into place. A lot of people that are already strapped to buy a $700 console are going to try to look for savings, and probably that's going to include not buying a disk drive. So you're essentially guiding people directly down the path of overcharging them for games for years and years and years. It's this has been done a lot. It's like selling a printer for $20 with starter ink cartridges that last a week, and then you hit them with an $80 refill a little bit later, but then they're stuck for life using your crappy overpriced ink. So if you are in the PlayStation ecosystem, please be aware of that. Save yourself some money. Get the disc drive for now. Maybe instead of putting $700 towards a Pro, move into PC, please, because even digital stores on PC compete with each other. And there's a free game every week from Epic because of it, and a lot of Steam sales, and it may be a slightly higher investment in hardware to begin with, but you save so much money over the years and years and years in all the games you buy. Lawrence
is right, and a lot of people at home are going to be like, but Lawrence, I don't have $1,200 to spend on a PC. That's what they're saying, and I completely understand, and I hear you. I don't think, at the risk of sounding jaded, this is literally just a cash grab. This is maybe the worst possible time to launch a console because inflation has been so high, everyone's, sort of still reeling from all the price increases on every single thing you're buying in your life. Honestly, this is like so cocky and arrogant of Sony to launch this console without a disc drive for $700 on their digital-only store that is clearly a monopoly. Like, all of this is so bad. There's just so many terrible things about it. And I would recommend, I don't often say this, but I would recommend not buying this. To me, there are no video games. It's way overpriced. Like, it's just like all the way around a terrible deal. And I don't see any silver lining to this. I really don't. Which is rare. It's pretty rare. And I've been seeing this, like, Sony turn on this for the last few years. And now that we're fully, deep into this almost recession, it's just not really, this just isn't good. And I just wouldn't do this even if you want the PS5 Pro. Like, I'm going to buy it for work, right? And we're going to show it off on stream and do the whole deal. But I'm not going to say buy this if you're actually looking for a console. Just get the PS5. Get the disc drive PS5, which is like, I think $450, $400, something like that. And that way you'll have a disc drive. And you can then buy video games on Amazon for $40 rather than the $70 they're charging on their digital store. So there's just so many different things. If you don't want to go the PC route like Lawrence and I have done and have done for years, do that. Try and figure out ways to undercut Sony. Because again, also the key reselling websites never sell keys for PlayStation 5 games because they've got a monopoly. It's the worst.
Unlike Xbox, PlayStation intentionally does not sell game codes. They only sell PlayStation 5 store credit codes. So yeah, they control the in and the out. And digital resellers don't have to compete with each other because they're not allowed to. Sony's got it locked down. So it's pretty clever, I guess. But there's a lot of people, I think, overpaying for a lot of games for a lot of years. The only upside I can see is it's actually a pretty efficiently designed hardware kit. For $700, ecosystem notwithstanding, the performance that it can put out is probably the best you get for $700. If you bought a PC for $700, you couldn't do what a PS5 Pro can do, but you'd have access to a lot more and a lot cheaper games. And if you're the type of player that prefers frame rate over image quality, you have access to all those tools on a PC as well. I also think we're definitely at the point of diminishing returns on graphics. And I think we passed that point a while ago. I think the fact that people choose performance mode over quality is an indication of that. And they can still have fun with their games. Maybe there's that PC style fuzz in the back of your head where you're like, oh, how good could it look? And then you run out to the store to buy a $50,000 video card just to see, and then it doesn't work and you get, well, it's a whole thing. So yeah, it does seem like it's a console that follows very traditional console development ideologies, but I don't think those apply so much anymore. I think we're kind of out of that window. So I'm really curious to see how this will go over. I'm really curious because there's no big new game to push it either, aside from maybe Black Ops 6, but that wasn't in the PS5 Pro boosted list. It was a bunch of old stuff, things that have been out for a year or two.
I think this is an overreach, Lawrence. I don't think this is going to sell well. I think these units are going very, very slowly. I think it's going to be like PSVR 2, where VR 2 they had to reevaluate and go like, oh, wait a minute. We don't need to sell 1 million of these. Well, we'll only sell 500,000. I think that's what this is going to be. I think the PS5 Pro is going to be the same problem. I'll be really, really curious to see what the sales units are like.
I think we're experiencing this in all aspects of our lives right now, but for sure in the PlayStation ecosystem, the free money's over, and now it's time for all the screws to tighten. So if you're invested in that ecosystem, it's going to get rough, and maybe look at ways of getting out. That would be my advice. It's kind of what we've been saying for the past couple of years because I think we all saw this coming.
All right, here are some Inside Games patrons that support our Patreon every single month. They actually sleep on a bed made of PlayStation 5 Pros. I don't know how they're doing this. Ryan Dareberry, Sherwin Sanchez, Rook, and Loveless.
My patrons are much more humble. They cut some corners. They got to tighten the belt. That's why they're sleeping under a pile of PlayStation 5 Pro boxes. Great insulation. Pit Strip, Ray Pichardo, Dougal Tutbo, and Lenny Nieves. I'm going to go with that pronunciation this month. Thank you very much for supporting the show. We really appreciate it.